This week, we're revisiting pacing, the dreaded word. How do you inject good pacing into your games? What is it, and what can you do when you suddenly need to change the pace on your players? Welcome to We Speak Common. Hello and welcome to another episode of the D&D podcast for everyone, because here we speak common. I'm Ben Norris, and this is the show brought to you in partnership with The Dice Dungeon, your one-stop shop for premium D&D dice, both resin, metal, and now glass sets of dice. Very, very nice. And of course, if you want to roll glass dice, you probably should do it on a felt line tray. So why not grab one of those from Dice Dungeon, or maybe even stockpile and get that book that you haven't got to finish off your collection by getting the official 5e D&D books from them too. There's loads of stuff available over the Dice Dungeon, so go and have a look. There's a link in the description below, as well as the code for 10% off your entire order, which is We Speak Common. We're also brought to you in partnership with Describe. That's DSCRYB.com. Describe are the place to go if you're not very good at creative writing, if you're not great at describing the scenes that your players come across, if you're not great at getting that blood-curdling, horrifying visage of the monster in their minds, then Describe is the place to go. They have professional creative writers filling out scenes for locations, monsters, spells, and items now too. And they've got over 3,500 scenes currently, and they're growing. I went back and had a look the other day just to get some inspiration for some stuff for my own game, and oh my god, there's so much good stuff on there. Go and have a look. There's a ton of scenes for free. If you like the service after looking at it and you want to get access to everything and that growing collection, then you can get a subscription with the code COMMON for 10% off every month for the first 2 years. Go and check it out. Description has a link below too. And of course, I would be amiss not to mention our incredible Patreons who have joined the D&D We Speak Common server, where we sit and talk about all things Dungeons & Dragons. We play play-by-post games, we role-play, we help each other work out problems, and we just get on and have a chat, really. I've been spending a lot of time in what we call the Vibe Zone, which is a VC channel where we sit with some music, and if I'm working from home, I'll often be sat in there, so people pop in and we talk all the time. It's a lovely, lovely community, and it's basically the antithesis of what I wanted to create, which is just a community of like-minded people. So if you want to get involved with that, if you want to directly support the We Speak Common channel, that's weird to call it a channel, but if you want to directly support We Speak Common, then head over there to the Patreon. It's in the description below, and of course you get extra 5e supplement content that I create as and when I create it too. Cool. That is all the usual stuff out of the way. Hello, how are you? I have something exciting for us today. I have a couple of exciting things, actually. It's just me today. Initially, I was going to have a guest on, a collaborative guest who, unfortunately, in the last minute had to reschedule. And I was scrambling to sort of try and pull together someone to pop in and take that place for this week's, because I've got the next couple of weeks lined up for guests and things, and I couldn't find anyone, and I thought, you know what, this is a good chance to revisit a topic that's been asked for a couple of times, and I'm sort of in a good place to do it alone as well. So we're going to be talking about a pretty big one today, but also to go alongside that, to go along the revival of this episode, I have an exciting new partnership for a special giveaway to announce for you today. So we're talking about pacing. We're talking about everything you need to know or need to think about or potentially need to do to have good pacing in your D&D campaigns and in your games, in your one-shots and things too. And if you're a big listener of the old episodes of the show, you'll know it's something that we've talked about a lot. And we've even done an episode on it before. But we all learn and we all grow and we all change, and it's time to revisit it. One thing that would definitely help with pacing, and it's probably not one of the tips I'm going to give because I'm going to say this now, but it's bloody good note keeping. I'll be honest with you. If you have your campaign lined out, if you have notes, if you have some form of little world Bible, whether it's big or small, it doesn't matter. As long as you've got your notes out, that's going to really help you to be able to draw on all of the stuff that you've created and you've made. And one of the biggest problems that a lot of people have, and I see it everywhere. I was scrolling through Reddit and I had a little look at the D&D side of TikTok the other day, and people are always sharing their different ways to keep their notes and keep things organized. But it's a big problem for people, I see. And like even I have a system. I use, I create documents using, Google Docs or using Pages, or, I make my own documents and just write out stuff and organize it that way. And that kind of works for me. But I would really love to use one of the services that's out there, and I'd never got a chance to get into it. Well, luckily, a couple of weeks ago, Obsidian Portal reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to check out our service and maybe give away what we offer? And so I went and had a look. I had a little look around, and I think it's a great little service. And I think that, as with everyone, it's another way to organize your notes. And I think people can could really benefit from this if you struggle with having your world all lined out properly. So Obsidian Portal is your new GM notebook. It's your new place to go to take the pain out of managing your tabletop RPG. And this isn't just D&D. I mean, obviously I will use it for D&D because that's what I play and that's what I love. But if you're running, Call of Cthulhu or Pathfinder or whatever, this is going to work for you too. And it is basically a service that includes the ability to create things like a campaign wiki, so that you and your players can go on their own personal Wikipedia and search for an NPC or a location and have the information and the notes for it. It's stuff for characters and adventure tracking. It even has a built-in scheduler so that you can plan all of your sessions together and never, have that awkward thing where someone says, oh, I'm not available that day. So it's an incredible little service, and it's kind of like the best way I can put it across is to say it's kind of like having your own corner of the internet. You get your own homepage that you can design. You can put maps and images up. You can write all the information out, and it's a beautiful little website just for your D&D campaign. It's an awesome service, and if you want to get full access to it, you can grab what is called their Ascendant membership. So the guys at Obsidian Portal lovingly gave me an Ascendant membership to go and have a play around with and have a look and make sure that, I thought you guys would actually get some good use out of it. And I think that you definitely could. And I think it's a great little tool to be used. And so, of course, I lovingly said, yes, I would love to give away a copy or at least an Ascendant membership for the next year. So if you want to get for a full year the unabashed access to Obsidian Portal, then that's what we're offering. All you have to do is head over to Twitter. There'll be a tweet that goes up today with this episode, if you're listening on Thursday, that you can enter into. And we'll be giving away one Ascendant membership package to Obsidian Portal for a full year. If you are struggling with your planning and keeping everything in one place, I implore you to go and check it out. And hey, it's a free thing. It's a free thing for you for a year, so why not go and enter? If you want a link to Twitter, there'll be one in the description as always, but go and have a look. The entries will be open for a year. A year? No, they won't. The entries will be open for a week. The Ascendant package is for a year. They'll be open for a week, and then we'll be announcing the winner, not next week, but the week after. So that will be Thursday the 19th, if my math is correct. So go and have a look. Go check it out. And by all means, go and look at Obsidian Portal before you enter if you want to. Make sure it's, what you'd use. But I think it's a cooler service. I think you will enjoy it. And I love being able to give you free shit. So there you go. There's the bonus for you too. Go check it out. And of course, I will make sure to remind you next Thursday that will be your last chance to enter if you want to sit and think about it for a little while. Okay. I'm very excited about this. I'm really excited about it. I really hope that someone who can really make the most use out of it gets to win that membership. So we shall see. We shall wait and see. So pacing then. Let's talk about pacing. I Can't remember who. Someone requested this a while ago, and I sort of put a pin in it and was like, yeah, I should revisit pacing. We've not talked about it for a long time, and it is one of the most important aspects of being a DM and planning out campaigns and long form stories and things. And then over on the Discord, I think a week or two ago, someone else suggested it. I'm actually trying to double check who it was. I think it was Mike. Hang on. No, it was Eldritch Barkeep. Such a good name. Such a good name. Something I think could be a really useful topic would be how to achieve good pacing. Ben and Joe used to talk about it all the time, but I found it so hard to get to grips with, and I still do at times. Recently, I feel I've got to grips better, and I have a super successful gothic horror one-shot that I think worked because of the pacing and the mountain tension. So, yeah, let's get into this. It's been a while since I have talked openly about pacing, and I think it's about damn time. So, for full reference, I am going to be talking about some of the tips that I gave out in an article that I wrote for Dice Dungeon, which you can still go and find. It went up a while ago. It's even when we had our old logo. Joe was my editor and I was the writer. So we both put some ideas on that. So by all means, check that out. You can find it by searching. I think if you search D&D pacing, it comes up on Google, which is claim to fame. So go and check that out. But I will be talking about some stuff we said on there, but also just about what pacing is in general. And I think for me, it's a tricky one. I think the reason that people like Eldritch Barkeep struggle to get grips to it is that it's kind of abstract. It's kind of open for interpretation in a lot of ways, in the sense that every single game can have different pacing. Every single game can feel different and can have different ups and downs. And so to put it into a real finite thing and say, here's how you achieve good pacing is really hard. That's really difficult. But what we can do is talk about what pacing means and what it is and how and what tips and things and how to kind of corral it and control it and find your own version of it. That's how I see it anyway. And I think that, some people will be like, well, no, pacing is this, and give you an explanation. And in a way they are correct. And actually, having said that, I'm interested to see what the definition of pacing is. So I'm gonna Google that right now because I hadn't even thought about that. Definition of pacing. Oh, I mean, it's not what you want. It's to walk at a steady speed, to move or develop something at a particular rate or speed. So yeah, so great. So that's what it is. Pacing is about how you develop the story. Great. That doesn't help you though, does it? That doesn't tell you how to achieve it or help you understand it any better. So for me, the way I would talk about pacing to people who are trying to get their grips around it is, I would say, think about, and this I think helps if you're new to D&D, think about a book, right? When you're reading a book or when you're watching a movie or even an episode or series, it has that hero story, it has that development of threat. It starts with maybe the hero. Let's talk, traditional fantasy novel. Think about The Lord of the Rings, maybe. It starts with Bilbo, if you're looking at The Hobbit, and it starts with Frodo in the Shire, if you're looking at Lord of the Rings and the Fellowship, and, everything's fine. And then something comes in and it changes. Gandalf turns up and he has a firework party. And, Frodo wants to go on an adventure with him, and there's the ring and all this kind of stuff. There's something is thrown in to change it, and suddenly there's excitement. And that gives you an injection of pace because there's excitement, there's speed, there's want to go and do something. Then, they run into their first obstacle. So it's been a while since I've read The Lord of the Rings, but I'm going to think the ring race, right? That's tension. That's, oh no, we're in danger. There's a problem. There's trouble here. And that's a different injection of pacing. It can still be an injection of speed to the story because it's that urgency to get away and to escape, but it can also be an injection of slowing down and hiding, and like that scene where Frodo's underneath that ledge in the forest and the ring wraith is like right over him. Like that's slower pacing because it's like we have to go quiet, we have to sneak, we have to be very still. That's an injection of slower pacing. And so when you think about a book or a TV show, there's these different ups and downs of moments of change in tempo, change in speed and urgency of whatever's happening in the story. It comes to a point where it climaxes and there's that final battle, that final confrontation or whatever it is in the story that you're watching or reading. And then it kind of calms down again, it settles out, and that's the end of the story. And it's kind of that traditional thing that you'd learn in English Lit Lang at school about how a story is structured and how there's ups and downs and ebbs and flows, and there's that big pinnacle and that big building tension to a climax, and then it falls away, and then there's the new normal. In D&D, we are, in many ways, trying to achieve the same thing. We're trying to achieve a great story. But because D&D is the medium that it is, because it's a tabletop RPG, and because the players are the main characters, we don't have complete control like we would if we were novelists writing a book or directors, working on an animated TV show. So we have to come up with new ways and interesting ways to inject pacing and to keep things moving and to slow things down. So instead of being a writer and thinking, well, I'm going to write in this bit here because it's felt a bit slow because they've been chilling out in Briverton, it's the players have been in this city for 2 weeks now and they've not left yet. So I need to inject something to up the tension, give them a bit of excitement and get them going again. So let's talk about that. And I think the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to talk about pacing and then I'm going to give you tips towards the end. I think that might be the best way to lay this out. So when we're looking at a D&D story, for me, and when I'm looking at a D&D story that I'm writing or I'm running, I am thinking about what the players are doing because they are the main characters. And I have to feel that atmosphere. I have to feel where they're at. So if we're running, an adventure where they're out in the wilderness and they are constantly coming up against feral creatures and monsters and they're having to fight for their lives and survive, a change of pacing would be to implement a safe haven, an oasis where they can rest and fully recuperate and not have to worry about being on watch for the night. And I'm going to inject that when I feel that the players have had too much of the same thing. When they've had 3 sessions of just constant encounters in the jungles or the mountains or the desert, wherever they are, I'm going to inject that bit of pacing change, slow the pace down, let them take the weight off their shoulders and relax and feel that sudden, oh my God, we can breathe. And that injection of a different piece of pace is going to do a couple of things. First of all, it's going to be new and exciting for them. There might be the opening thing of them like thinking it's too good to be true and not believing it. But that's a different issue. That's not pacing. That's going to be like how you portray things. But not only is it going to be new and exciting, but it's going to give them a chance to experience a style of gameplay that they haven't had for a while. So for 3 sessions, they've been using their resources and fighting off monsters and all this stuff. Well, now suddenly they can rest. They can focus on a bit of role play. They can do some downtime activities. Maybe they've got books that they're reading because they unlock new skills for them. Or maybe they're, they need to pray to their God and they haven't had a chance to because they haven't been able to physically rest for so long. So they're going to have this sudden change in what they can do and what they feel. You're going to let them play in that for a little bit, let them explore that for a little bit. But they also know that it's finite and eventually they're going to have to leave. And so that's going to have that underlying, maybe tension is the wrong word, but underlying tension or that underlying thought. And then when they get to the point where they are like, okay, we've been here for too long or we need to go, they're going to feel that ramp up in tension and they're going to feel that pace change again when they leave the oasis. And similarly, what if your characters came across a town in the grassy hills and they stayed? And they said, we're going to bunker down here and rest. And they really enjoyed the NPCs. And so they've been there for a week. And you're sitting here as the DM thinking, well, we're meant to be saving the world from a null invasion from their null god. So what's going on, guys? You just gonna retire here now? Your mission's half done. What you can do is you can inject a sense of urgency and a change of pacing by either doing something like having new arrivals to the town, which is a really good one. If players have been in a town for a long time, have a band of adventurers and people arrive and they're battered and bloodied and bruised, and maybe they've got a couple of dead that they need to bury because they were attacked by Gnoll tribes. And the players are suddenly going to go, oh, the world's still moving. Oh, people are still dying because we've not finished our mission. Oh, we need to leave and go and continue. And maybe if they don't get that message, maybe you have the Gnolls attack the town. You know, maybe they arrive and they have been following the players, and that sudden juxtaposition of peaceful town is to burning village is going to snap the players out. There's a sudden urgency. There's a sudden injection. There we go, of excitement, and they're going to need to act. And that fundamentally is what a change of pacing is, from quiet calm to excitement, or excitement to quiet calm. You've slowed things down or you've sped things up. And that's going to get them moving and get them going. I realise now as I'm talking, I'm kind of speaking about what pacing is and how you would use it. And I think that's made sense. But if not, I'll clarify how I use pacing. And that is to keep the story flowing. I know for my party that they love to roleplay. They love it. And so they will very easily lose an hour just talking amongst themselves, and I can sit there and not say anything. And at times that's great and that's perfect. So when we were playing a city-based adventure, that was great because there was lots of role play in that environment, and there was lots of NPCs to interact with. A lot of the encounters were role play encounters rather than combat ones, and that really helped, and they really flourished there. But now that they're exploring the jungles, and they're looking for a lost city to find the end of this curse that is threatening the world, when we've got 4 watches overnight and everybody is having an hour to talk to each other every night in game, we're suddenly not getting anywhere, and we're suddenly not, doing the thing that's important. And there's 2 problems to that. The first is that, one, your session, every session, because they're traveling through the jungle pretty much every session at the moment, is just roleplay during Night Watch. And 2, the story falls to the wayside because the themes are about life and death situations, and people are dying, and you need to go and do this as quickly as possible, and there's a clock, and all this kind of like risk and reward kind of stuff. But because they're sitting there and talking all the time, we're losing all of that. So to do both of those things, to give the players their chance to role play and to keep the story flowing and keep the themes and the feelings that I want to portray as a DM, I need to make sure I am utilizing pacing to the best of my ability. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. And I think that's an important thing to say here as well, is that people get this wrong all the time, so don't worry about it. Sometimes your pacing is on point and sometimes it's not. So in the jungles, there are a couple of things that I've done. Overnight, now that we have spent a good 25 days in the jungle, I've said, okay, from now on, yes, there will be 4 watches, as always, but we're only going to focus on 1 watch. So we're only going to role play one of those watches a night, which instantly cuts down how many people are sitting and just having random role play encounters over night time, which takes up so much time, right, in game. It's good, but there's too much of it at the moment, so I'm going to cut that down. And they all agreed and said that was great. And that's helped a lot. And that immediately has helped me to get some time back in the sessions. But then the thing that I do as a DM for pacing is that when the party arrive to, let's say, an abandoned campsite in a plateau in the jungles, and they're investigating it, but they're being indecisive about what they're going to do because, I don't know, maybe there's a chest and they don't know whether it's locked or whether it's trapped or whatever. When they're being indecisive, what I'll do is I will either interject, that's the word I'm looking for, interject with a question. So if 2 characters are talking about, well, maybe the chest is trapped and we shouldn't open it, and but I could go and look. Oh yeah, but if you do that, you might activate the trap. What I'll do is if the conversation is going around, and it has been going around for a while, I will turn to one of the other characters and say, hey, what are you doing right now? While these guys are having this conversation, what are you doing? And instantly I take the spotlight away from the chest and this conversation that's not going anywhere and put it on someone else and give them a chance to say what they're up to and what they're doing. And that's a quick pace change, because now we're talking potentially about a different piece of action that's happening in the same set piece. And that gives those characters a chance to take a breath and stop thinking about it for a second and let someone else have their say as well. I'm not saying that my players don't allow that anyway, but it gives us a chance to come away from the focal and go to a different focal point. And then we can come back to the chess when we're ready to make a decision. Another thing I can do, if they're decisive about, let's say they've gone to a shrine and the shrine looks very inviting but also empty and quiet and there's a corpse outside and they don't want to go in. If they're talking about whether they want to go in a lot, I can just say, well, what are you going to do? What are you doing? That is such a powerful question as a DM, because it's not an impolite way to say, it's not impolite like saying, okay, but make a decision, come on. It's, okay, but what are you doing? Like, we've talked about it now, but what are you going to do? And it gently nudges the players to go, okay, here's what I'm actually going to do. Rather than, oh, we could do this, we could do that. It's what are you doing? Not what might you do, it's what are you doing? And that's a very important thing to use and remember in all instances of D&D, because we've got to remember that when we look at locations and monsters and creatures and encounters, we often look at them in the sense of, what can the players do here? Why are the players here? What can they achieve? What can they do? And so that question brings it all back, and I think that frames everything nicely. In the same sense that when players are moving through jungles and or moving through a desert, whatever, they're out exploring, they're having their adventuring days, and they have had the same kind of stuff every time. So maybe they haven't rolled any encounters. And so as a DM, you might get stuck and say the same thing every time. Well, you have a clear day of travel, you bed down for the night, you get up, roll your die. Oh, okay, well, you have another clear day of travel. And that can be great for if you want to expedite travel. But if you're looking to inject some pacing because you've just said the same thing over and over again, what you can do is instead, okay, they haven't rolled an encounter, but you can inject a little bit of pacing change by putting in some intrigue. So, oh, you have gotten up this morning, it's a hot, sweaty day in the jungle. I'm using the jungle as an example because I'm running Chol right now. You have a hot, sweaty day in the jungle. It's exhausting. You push on through, each of you drinking your water as you walk. You're not wanting to stop, wanting to keep going. And luckily, you describe it better, but luckily, the favors of your gods are shining down on you. And while you don't come into any dangerous creatures this day, what you do see around about lunchtime, when you stop to sit for 5 minutes and have some food, as you watch a gaggle of monkeys swinging overhead in the branches, their shouts echoing through the vast jungles, and as they dissipate, the sound dying down, you hear the call and response of monkeys miles and miles away. There's a little bit of, oh wow, the world's alive. And while that's not an exact pacing change in the sense that I've suddenly put you in a different scenario, it's a little bit of something to latch on to that gives you a bit of pacing, gives you a bit of, oh, something's happening. I feel like it's very hard to explain pacing because I feel like I'm saying things that make sense to me and I hope that they make sense to you as well. But it's a very hard thing to for me to explain. I don't know why I struggle so hard with it. I don't know if that's just me. Maybe that is just me. But I could be saying this and you could be like, no, I totally get what you're saying. I totally understand. So it's not a problem. But it's this way of putting in something that gives them what's the word I'm looking for? It gives the players something tangible to experience other than just, you have a clear day of travel through the jungles. Because there's no pace to that. But there is a bit of pace to a short little experience or a little scene you can set for them that they experience. And it also lets them know that they are, experiencing the world around them. So pacing then really has those two functions of getting the players moving and going when they slow down or when they've had too much, and slowing them down when they're just going constantly. and also injecting something to get them moving when they're stuck. Those are the two. What's the word? Those are the two ways of using pacing in a game. The other type of pacing is when you're planning the story and when you're planning the campaign. Now, obviously, some people like to plan their whole story before they go and then change bits as the players go through them. I'm kind of like that in the sense that I like to know potential outcomes and things, but not all of them, because you can never prep for everything. You should never over prep in a way. Some players like to write them as they go, and they know that, you know, this is a plot thread and this is a plot thread and that's a plot thread and that's all out there and we'll see where they go. And that's fine too. But in both sense of those, you need to understand what those plot threads or what that story holds in the sense of pacing. So if you've got a storyline that's high octane energy and you've got a storyline that's high intrigue and roleplay, those are very different things. And so they would need different types of pacing. Every now and then, your high intrigue role-playing story is going to need a bit of action to give a palate cleanser to what the players are experiencing. And every now and then, your high octane adventure is going to need a bit of breath of fresh air and slowing down. And so think about that when you're planning your stories and your hooks. Another thing that we've talked about, I'm not going to talk about it in length, but another thing that we've talked about on the show before is plot keys and how you can create these keys of plot information that you can put anywhere. And if you use that system, you don't have to, but if you do use that system, or if you have an NPC or a piece of information that can be put anywhere and the players aren't getting anything, like they're not getting anywhere and they're struggling and you can see that they're struggling, you can take one of those and put it in front of them when they achieve something, because that will give them a reward. And if it's a bit of information, that's a pacing change, because suddenly they're excited. They've got this new bit of information. They can now start talking about things again and get the ball rolling. And that's another use of pacing too. I think I've explained it. It's a tricky one. It's hard to put your finger on, but it's delivering the story and the experience and the feelings that your characters are having, and that's why it's so important. You know, if you can make your players feel, you know, the sense of like calm before the storm, or the frantic rush or mellow afternoon, then you're doing it right. And that's what pacing is. The skill comes in how you deliver that, in seeding that things are going to happen, in not making them feel random and just suddenly out of nowhere. And we'll get into that in a minute. First, I would like to talk about our wonderful partners here on We Speak Common. And I like doing these solo episodes because they give me a chance to speak candidly about these partnerships and others, which we'll get into. So this show has been working with Dice Dungeon for a while now, over a year. Ben and Dave are two really cool guys who I speak to quite often. They run the shop here in the UK. And if you are one of my UK listeners, you'll know that it can be tricky to find D&D providers who are, UK based, unless you go to the dreaded Amazon. And so it's really good to support local stores, support local sellers, and I think Ben and Dave really just are the I can never say that word. They are the antithesis. They are really great guys, and they're a great store. And when they reached out to me over a year ago, and Joe, when he was here, we instantly were like, yeah, these guys are our goals align. We want to make sure that people in the UK have access to this D&D stuff. And luckily, through doing this and through We Speak Common, I've kind of expanded that beyond the UK in a lot of ways, and I'm very excited about that. But if you are a UK resident and you've been with us for a long time, then you'll know why we've got such a great relationship with them. I don't know if you can hear that car alarm that suddenly just went off outside. That was annoying. So the Dice Dungeon started off as a dice store, and they have grown so much over the last year, much like We Speak Common has, and it's been really fun to watch them grow alongside us. They are selling beautiful metal and resin dice. I have a set here. I have the plain shard Shadowfell dice. I talk about these all the time, and actually, funnily enough, as a DM, they always roll high for me. Last night, I used them for the first time as a player, and I rolled low. I think dice don't like me as a player, but they love me as a DM. So go and check those out. They are my recommendation for the dice set you should get. They are gorgeous. The Dice Dungeon now sell glass dice, which are beautiful. They sell D&D 5e books. So if you are needing a book to add your collection, or if you want to pre-order the upcoming new books like Fizbin's Treasury or The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, then you can. And of course, your entire basket can have 10% off all of your orders if you use the code WeSpeakCommon, and you'll be supporting the show by doing that too. But go and check them out. And of course, I should say as well, they ship worldwide. So I say all that about supporting UK creators because that's where our roots were. But support them in general if you want D&D stuff. You know, I know we've got a few European audience members and things. So if you're looking for D&D paraphernalia, they're a great place to go. And if you go to the website, you can find the pacing article too. Then, of course, there's Describe, who have been with us for a little while now. Describe are a really interesting service that I just love the concept for, and that's why I jumped on board with it when they reached out to me. Basically, I sometimes feel like I'm really good at descriptive speaking, and sometimes I feel like I'm really bad at it. And they are the place to go when I feel like I'm awful at it. And it's a big weight off your shoulders. So Describe is spelt DSCRYB. And that's their website address, describe.com, dscryb.com. They have creative writers who write box text like you would find in, you know, Tyranny of Dragons or Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage. They have that box text, but they write it for a specific thing, like a creature or for a spell. Or for, you know, a certain location. So if you know that your wizard is going to cast the Veil of Blue Dreams, which is a big spell, that's a massive spell, you're going to travel to a different world, and you want to capture that, you can go to Describe and find their professionally written creative box text for it and use that. And you might go and find it and think, oh, I don't like it completely, but it's given me a great starting place to go as well. So I think they're a wonderful service. They're growing every single week. They have something silly like 3,500 scenes now, but it's not. It's more than that because they have to round the number up and down to make it rather than just have a ticking clock because they're adding them all the time. But go and have a look. There's a bunch of them for free, so you can just go and explore those. And then obviously the full collection is behind the subscription service. So if you want to subscribe, if you do want to use it, then you can use the code COMMON to get 10% off your monthly subscription every single month for 2 years. So go and check those out. Again, links below, but a great little service and great for when you have that writer's block, effectively. We need our own name for writer's block that's like D&D. When you have Dungeon Master's block, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't flow. Well, think about it. The other partner for today's episode, and this really excited me, is of course Obsidian Portal. So a guy called Alan over at Obsidian Portal reached out and said, hey, we wondered if you wanted to do a bit of a collab just to see how we got on, but obviously we want to make sure that you know that your audience is going to enjoy our product. So here, go have a look at it and check it out. So Obsidian Portal is like your own corner of the website, your own corner of the internet as a website for your D&D campaigns. You create wikis out of your NPCs, your locations, your monsters and things that players come across, and you can add to it and take things away from it all the time. You have a home landing page, and so for example, I was playing around with it and setting one up for Chult, and I can have my journey so far map, the map of Chult that the players have with the line that follows where they've traveled, kind of like in Emperor's New Groove. Like they've got that line showing where they're going, so I can update that every week so they can see where they're progressing. You know, and I can add notes. The players get their own section to write notes. You know, you can add stuff, take stuff away. It's a really interesting concept, and I think that if you really jump into it, you can make something incredible and amazing out of it. And it's also just there for you to go back and look at when the campaign's done as well, and like to go through it and look at how far you've come. So the way Obsidian Portal works is they have a membership system, and the membership that gives you access to everything is the Ascendant membership, I believe. I'm going to double check that. Yeah, Ascendant membership. And so I went back to them and said, yeah, I think this is a really cool platform. I'd love to give away the membership. So I've got one of those to give away for a full year. So a full year, you get a good campaign in that. You can use the Ascendant membership of Obsidian Portal for free. If you want to get that, the giveaway goes live today on Twitter, and it'll close in a week, and the winner will be announced first here on the episode on the 19th, Thursday the 19th. So go and check that out. And of course, as ever, I got to thank the patrons. We've had some new ones join recently. So if you're listening to this as a new patron, thank you very, very much. I know we've spoken the server, but it means so much to have you guys along for the ride and helping me to keep this thing going. Because there are things that happen. I mean, I don't talk about it a lot because there's no point. You know, I don't need to tell you when a microphone breaks, or I have to order some new headphones because they've stopped working, or for example, my desk that I used to reroute all the audio through, I had to have that. I literally had to strip it and order new parts and put it back together. So there's no point me telling you when that stuff happens. It's not interesting, but having your support really helps. And I hope that the server is a lovely reward for that. I know that you guys really enjoy it. I love it. It's my favorite thing. I'm on there all the time. Literally, it's on my phone 24/7. And of course, the extra stuff that comes through on the Patreon occasionally as well. So thank you so much. And if you want to get involved with that, if you want to support the show that way, you can. Again, there's a link in the description below. As ever, I always say, why would you want to give money to free content on the internet? I don't expect you to do that if you're listening and you're not a member, but if you want to, you can. And if you don't want to, that's cool. Just share the show like you would with any of your friends. Cool. Let's do some actual tips for pacing then. Let's do some actual functioning things you can use tips. So I'm going to start with feel the atmosphere. And I think this is a really important one. Your players are your best hints and your best way of knowing if the current pacing is right. You know, are they enjoying their days in the city, just running errands and getting jobs done? Are they enjoying the long dungeon delve? Do they like the fact that they're fighting things constantly? Or are they sitting in a tavern waiting for a fight to break out 24/7? Are they looking for trouble? Do they want to find someone to go and fight? That's your best starting point to see whether you know whether your players are enjoying the current pace. And you should always be in touch with this. You should always be checking this. You know, I constantly watch my players' faces during games. I want to know that they're smiling or crying sometimes, because sometimes you do cry in D&D. You got to feel that emotion, you know, when your characters die. You know, I want to make sure that they are engaged and they're having fun and they're enjoying it. And so pacing is a big key to that. And what they're doing, what they're saying, how they're playing is a great hint to whether they're getting edgy and they want to like get off their seats and run and move, or they want to sit down and breathe and take a minute. So watch your players. And if you aren't sure, and I always say this, ask them. You know, if you want to make sure that your players are having fun, sometimes you just got to ask them. I do it. I'm like, hey, did you enjoy that session? Is there anything that could have been different? And if I've done a good job, it's no, it was a great session, I had a lot of fun, I wouldn't have changed anything. And if there was something that was a little bit off, then I'll take that in my stride and I'll work on it. You know, that's the point. So your players are your best hints. Read the atmosphere. But at the same time, plan to change the pace. Have something up your sleeves. And that shouldn't be a sudden random dragon attack or, you know, a undead horde rising from the ground of the graveyard for no reason. But you should have things that you could do if you need to add in, you know, someone's just got a new role on the We Speak Common server, if you heard that. You know, it could be a thing that slows pace down or speeds it up. So the important thing, I think, is to seed those things. So when you know your players are going to a village, what I would do is I would plan some events. We talked about dynamic locations before. That's that town. That village, I would have built it as a dynamic location, and so there would be things that can change. But I would also put in little mini quests there in case the players want to stop over and rest for a bit. They don't have to do them, but if they want to, they can. And so I might hint that there are scratch marks. Let's go with the Knoll example that we gave earlier. There are scratch marks on the fence posts, and there's that one house that looks really rickety, and some of the wood boards have been pulled away and people have moved out. Like, clearly something's gone down here if the players look for those clues. Maybe all of the farmers have rakes and things, but they also have a spear each for if gnolls invade. And so if then the players get comfortable and I need to inject some pacing, I can have a gnoll attack on the village and it won't feel so random. And if it does, the NPCs can be like, oh, these gnolls, they're back again. Here we go. Let's not have them take little Jimmy this time. So poor Jimmy. So I seed those potential pacing changes in the same way that if I know my players are going to go into the open desert, I might have an NPC say, well, if you're lucky, you might find an oasis. Like, ha, 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 ha. And then if I have to pull one out, I can, Plan for some pacing changes, some easy little things you can do. They don't have to be big set pieces like gnoll attacks. In a city, it can be as simple as a random encounter of a thief running by and pickpocketing a player. That's a classic one, Doesn't mean that the character doesn't expect there to be thieves in a city. Of course they do, but you can seed it by talking about how the city has a particularly bad seedy underbelly, that kind of stuff. So there are little ways to seed little pacing changes, and if you can start thinking of those and just have them in the back of your mind, you're going to be good for any pacing change you need. And it's one of those things that's going to come with time, I think. The more you run in a city, the more things you can just pull out of thin air, but also pull out of thin air that already have things laid out so that people the players can see them and know that they're a potential. I spent so much time running Waterdeep now that I feel like I can pretty much pull anything out there and have it make sense because I've spent so much time there. Whereas desert campaigns, I've not done as much. So that would be really tricky for me at first, but eventually I'd get really good at it. And that's just practice and time and spending thought on it and prepping it and stuff. So seed those pacing changes and have a few in the back of your mind if you can feel that it's going to be needed. And you'll know, I think, normally. But yeah, I think the next step of that is to maybe find some time to write some small encounters that you can pull out in case you need them to move the story on. I don't normally do that myself, but it's definitely a tactic. So I think those work better for traveling adventurers. Like, I wouldn't want to write a random encounter to throw into a city without seeding it, because I want the city to feel lived in and to make sense. But if the players are out on the road and they haven't come across anything, I might pull out a campsite encounter that I've written before, or a road block sort of standoff with guards that I've written before, because I want there to be something for the players to experience a small injection of pace to give a break up between that day of traveling and then just another day of traveling and then just another day of traveling. Well, now it's a day of traveling. In the second day, they come across this encounter and they decide to pay the thieves who are pretending to be guards or kill them and steal their money. And then they keep going the next day. And there's that little sudden peak in that pace there. And like I said, pace is peaks and troughs. Troughs being the slower pace, peaks being the faster pace. Imagine your story as a straight line. It should have a few ups and downs in it along the way. One of the tips that we gave when we wrote the Dice Dungeon article a while ago was to stick to your guns. And I think that's something that I want to reiterate, in the sense that sometimes the DM does know best and is doing things for a reason. Sometimes impatience, confusion, and frustration can be powerful motivators for players when employed purposefully by the DM. So, for example, the one that Joe and I always used to talk about was the Blue Dragon Hunt that I ran in my homebrew world. They were following the trail of destruction of a blue dragon for about 3 sessions, and they were itching at the bit to get to it. They saw it from miles away at the end of a session and decided to approach. The next session they found where it had fought this airship, and it had crashed. The airship had crashed, and they saw the destruction of it. And so they went off in the direction it went, and they traveled for a while. Eventually, they found their cart went over the carcass of a cow that it had dropped. The dragon had dropped. It snacked halfway. Then they came across a farmer's hut that had been pretty much ruined and destroyed, and they spoke to the farmers there. The next session, they were traveling even further, and eventually they caught up with the storm that followed the blue dragon, as they started to realize it was the blue dragon. If they didn't, I think they got that from the NPCs, but they reaffirmed it, and then the storm got really heavy and they couldn't see, and then eventually they caught up to the dragon and they had the encounter with it, and then the fight with it, and then it ran away, and they went up to it again and they killed it, and it was this whole big drawn out thing, and it was a whole arc of this campaign. But and Joe always said to me how he just wanted to fight the dragon. He's like, I just want to get the dragon. I just want to do it. I just want to fight it. But I stuck to my guns, and instead of moving it close to them, I kept pushing them to keep trying. I kept pushing them to follow these clues and these trails to get to it, so that when they did get to it, and Joe always said this to me, he said, and I always remember this because I was one of you'll have moments as a DM where you're like, yes, I'm really happy I did that right. I can tick that off. And this is one of those moments for me, is that Joe said he was frustrated to get to the dragon and fight it, but when he did, when they finally got there, it was so much better than he anticipated it to be because of that build-up. And so that frustration and that long drawn-out pace of trying to catch up to this giant beast, this was a adult dragon. The long drawn-out time it took for them to catch up to and fight it paid off, and that's why I stuck to my guns in that pacing. And so sometimes you will just be right, and you'll be able to see that your players are reaching for the next bit of pacing change, but you know why you're sticking to your guns. So sometimes you are right, and that's okay, and that's good. So believe in yourself a little bit more, I say to myself and you. The final tip that's on our little, there's the server again. I should really mute the computer, shouldn't I? That would be professional. The final tip that we gave on our article was to not worry about it, in the sense that sometimes you're gonna get it wrong, because we all do, and that's okay, as long as you learn from that experience and you're open to talking to your players and saying, hey, what did you like? What didn't you like? What do I need to change? So if you're struggling with pacing, don't worry about it. We've all been there, and we all will be there, in the sense that sometimes I get pacing wrong still, even though it's something that I feel I know enough to be able to sit and talk about for an hour. It's just how it is. That's just how it goes sometimes. But don't beat yourself up about it. If the story isn't quite coming off the way you want it to, absolutely look at it and, adjust it and make some changes. But don't dwell on that. Don't worry about that. Because at the end of the day, if you're playing with friends, and it can be different if you're just playing, Adventures League with random people, but if you're playing with friends, we're all there to experience a fun story and a game. And so we're going to be having fun anyway. And this is why Joe and I used to say, oh, well, at least bad D&D's still D&D. Because for us, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't our best, but it was still our friends sat together playing this beautiful game and telling these stories together. If I was playing in random games, bad D&D is definitely worse than D&D. in any sense of the way, but for us it wasn't. So if you are playing with friends and you're at a table with people that you trust and love, then hey, it's a game, it's a story, and if you got the pacing a little bit wrong, don't worry about it. You'll get it right next time. And that's important to remember too. You know, we're not always going to get it perfect. As much as I like to pretend that I do always get it perfect, I don't. Of course I don't. Just like everybody else. Everybody likes to pretend they're always getting it spot on, but sometimes we get it wrong. What other tips do I have that aren't on that little article? I think I said earlier, imagine your story as a flat line and you need to put some peaks and some dips in it. And then you need, think of it that way if it helps you. I think that's a good analogy for me, personally, because sometimes you need to put in that peak of speed and that dip of mellowed out chill time. So think of it that way if it helps you. I think plan some things, like I said, but also plan some people, plan some plot keys, plan different things, not just encounters, because you never know when you're going to need that pacing change. And I can't remember the other tips I gave because I've been talking for 55 minutes now, but I hope that this has been helpful. I hope that this has been a good revisit of pacing. And I hope that Eldritch Barkeep it has helped you and whoever the other person was that requested it a while ago. Sorry it took so long. I was slightly dreading it in my brain, but I'm glad that I've done it and I'm glad we've talked about it today. And I think that all I needed was my plans to be cancelled to to sit down and do it. So there's that. I think I'm going to leave it there. I think I'm going to leave it there for pacing. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think about pacing and any tips that you use to keep an eye on it or inject it into your games when you need to. I think that it's something I've become better at. I think, well, if I'm being truthfully honest, I think I've become a lot better at it, but I have games where I'm not as good at it as I can be. So I'd love to hear how you do that. And I'd love to know what your tips and tricks are. I feel like there was something I was going to say about pacing that I've forgotten, so there's that, I suppose, but that always happens, doesn't it? Is there anything I have to say to you before we close for the week? I don't think there is. I feel like there was, and I can't remember what it was now. Oh, that's what it is. The D&D Agony Aunt is open, and I have had a submission for a really good one, so I think I'm going to use that potentially in the next couple of weeks. I have decided that should you wish to send in any D&D Agony Aunt submissions, we might make it a little mini segment that appears in episodes every now and then. So it's either that or it will appear as a little bonus episode every now and then. So I've not quite decided, but keep submissions coming. D&D Agony Aunt basically is it didn't have a name before years ago, but people used to suggest send us on the emails things that are going in their games that they're not sure how to handle. So if you've got any of those, it is now called D&D Agony Aunt, and all you have to do is email them to wespeakcommon@hotmail.com, and as and when we get them, I will talk about them on either a segment or a bonus episode. I'm not quite sure how it's gonna be delivered yet, but if you want to get in touch that way, wespeakcommon@hotmail.com, send them in. That's what I was going to tell you. We have had some submissions, and I'm excited to talk about them, so do keep them coming. Cool. I'm going to leave it there. If you want to get in touch with the show, wespeakcommon@hotmail.com is the email, @wespeakcommon on Twitter and Instagram, and of course all the links at wespeakcommon.com or on the WeSpeakCommon Twitter Linktree link. Have a fantastic rest of your day, a great weekend. I hope you play some D&D soon and that it is good and full of the right pacing. And I will speak to you soon. See you later. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, do us a favour and share us with a friend or a D&D group near you. If you'd like to directly support We Speak Common, you can by heading to the links in the description, either on this episode or via our social medias to find our Patreon. It's the best way to directly support the production of more shows like the one you listened to today. You can connect with the show on Twitter and Instagram at We Speak Common.
The music in the episode is Street Dancing by Timecrawler82 and is held under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. You can find it on the Free Music Archive.